What is up? We are back. Star Wars Newsnet Live. The countdown to Ahsoka is going strong. We are going to be talking all things Clone Wars and how Ahsoka's journey through Clone Wars might affect her perspective or things in the Ahsoka show, as well as, there's other characters that could pop into the show from the Clone Wars. Today we're joined by none other than Mr. Brian. How you doing, Brian?
What's going on, guys? Let's talk some Ahsoka, man.
I'm so excited.
Ready, bring it on.
And we're also here with Jay, back for his second go-around on Star Wars Newsnet Live. Doing all right, Jay?
I am doing great. Hello, Andrew. Thank you for joining us.
So for today's live stream, for anyone in the chat, we're talking Clone Wars. We're going to be talking Ahsoka in Clone Wars. So if you have anything to add to the Clone Wars conversation, just drop it there. Any questions about, how Clone Wars might impact the series, definitely drop it in there as you go. But I want to talk first with us today, just kind of about, before we start talking about like who might show up in the Ahsoka show from Clone Wars or anything like that, what if we dive into, what were some of the key moments where Ahsoka's perspective may have changed during Clone Wars that might, come into some of how she's developing relationships in the Ahsoka show, how she maybe gets to the point she's at, later in her life, things like that. I thought that would be something good because I think we always talk about Anakin or ObiWans, but who are some of the other characters that, she impacts that, might. And if you guys can't think of any off the top of your head, don't worry. I did make a list of a few that we can talk about. But who stands out right off the top of your head?
Right off the bat, Rex.
Mm-hmm.
I think Rex is he was the one that gave her her first bit of advice in that first episode we see her in when he's talking about experience outranks rank, and she's like well, if that's experience, I need to get some and I think that is something that came back into play later on in the series too, if I remember right. It was mentioned between the two of them, so it had a lasting impact on her, and that was kind of the start of that relationship between the two, and I mean a relationship that went for how many years, decades, and so that Rex is a big one.
Has it been confirmed? It is confirmed, right, that Tamora Morrison is in Ahsoka?
Confirmed by everyone but Lucasfilm, who never confirms anything anymore.
Right.
Confirmed, yeah.
I mean, that's a great pick, Brian, because I mean, obviously, like Rex is a big part of Ahsoka's journey, not just in the Clone Wars, but also in Rebels. And yeah, like those two are basically a strong pair throughout all of the characters' existence. And so I 100% agree with your pick. I was the two characters that I wanted to pick for this discussion when you brought this up, Tyler, were Luxs and Saw Gerrera, because there is that arc in, I think it's season 4, where we see Saw Gerrera fighting up against the separatists and all of that, and like we also get to see even Ahsoka have to confront the fact that like Lux actually doesn't romantically isn't interested in Ahsoka like that, and then like she's a little bit heartbroken from that experience. And so I think that was one of my own personal favorite episodes, and like was a great few episodes that I really enjoyed. And so I think that's gonna be really foundational, maybe even going into Ahsoka. But what do you think, Tyler?
Yeah, well, I did write down all three of those characters. First with Rex, I think it's obviously so important. And then you think about the Siege of Mandalore arc at the end of season 7, how Rex is even, I wouldn't say he's okay with killing the clones that are trying to attack them, but he's very real. Like, those people are going to kill us. They're firing. They're not shooting, stun blasts at them. But Ahsoka was so clear in that, I'm not going to kill them. Like, this ship may crash or whatever is going to happen, but I'm not going to do it. And that was just this connection that she had with Rex there, where she looked at him and like saw him and saw what he was going through, and almost gave him the okay that you don't have to shoot to kill for me either. And that, so like their relationship really grows a lot from the moment, we see him on Christophsis. So I did a season 1 review of all of Clone Wars that I put on Star Wars News, and then it was like basically every episode Ahsoka has been in the season 1 and how it changes. And there was something I included was in the arc where they are going after Grievous's warship, the Malevolence, and Ahsoka is actually, sorry, no, this was the Storm over Ryloth episode. Sorry, I just so much Ahsoka on the brain lately. But they're in the storm
after a while.
So it's the Storm over Ryloth episode, and Ahsoka loses like her entire squadron trying to break the siege over the blockade. And Anakin basically says, "You're gonna have to trust your gut and gain your confidence back." And he leaves her in charge, and she is very much shaken, doesn't really have much confidence. And this could have been a time where Rex stepped in and said, "All right, I'm going to start, calling more shots," or because some of the clones actually began to not outright question her orders, but were hesitant to obey them right away, or looked at her a little bit differently. And Rex was the one that said, "You heard her, like, let's get after this," and encouraged her along the way. And that was the very beginning of their relationship there in season 1. So he's been a huge source of like this confidence builder even for her as well. But Brian, do you have any like other early memories of like Rex Ahsoka and like the early seasons of Clone Wars, or like early on that really kind of impacted her on her journey that stand out?
I'm not sure about Rex, and nothing that really stands out. What you brought up, when she was having that kind of existential crisis there for a little while, was a big one. But other than that, a lot of it was building between her and Anakin, kind of through season 1. When she started to get out on her own a little bit more, and later in the series, I think Rex started to have a little bit more of an impact on her, especially hell, even in Siege of Mandalore, when she walks in and they're all painted, with her face paint and everything, and it showed, that relationship that they had built between the two of them throughout the entire series, and the respect that she had, and especially when she's saying, I don't know why they're saluting me and calling me commander, and he's telling them, well, you are, to them, they still remember everything you did for them and everything that you fought for, you fought with them and everything. And so I thought that was a nice little touch and a nice little moment between them two.
So Andrew in the chat's asking us, what we'd say the saddest moment for Ahsoka is in any project. And while we're certainly going to talk about some Rebels next week, maybe let's tailor this to what is the saddest Ahsoka moment in the Clone Wars. And I wonder if we might even have some different answers in this one. But Jay, what would you, off the top of your head, saddest Ahsoka moment in the Clone Wars?
I think
we're all thinking it.
Yeah. I'm like, are we all thinking? Like, it's gotta be when she leaves the Jedi Temple, right? I mean, so funny story about like the Clone Wars, and like I'll be writing this up in my look back at Ahsoka and in her first appearance for Star Wars: The Clone Wars in the animated movie. But I was like, when I first watched the Clone Wars animated movie, I was 9 years old. Like, it was like my 9th birthday. And so for me, like, I grew up with Ahsoka, all the same, lessons that she was learning, like I was learning in real life, like as I was growing up. So I had like a real deep connection with her. And then so when she left, like I was maybe like 13, 14. I don't know, like I was still like relatively young. But, that was a big even moment for myself, because like that was like I felt like a childhood friend had just left my life, because like, again, I grew up with her, and it's almost like when you realize like your best friend who you hang out with at school is leaving, you know, and you can't see them anymore, you're like, oh, but like we can't hang out anymore. We can't play video games, you know.
Right
And it was
after you didn't back him up over, something that you actually he was framed to do by your other friend, and no.
I mean, but yeah, like even just like the circumstances too of like how it happens, right? You know, like right, like what you said, even with like how Mace Windu treats her, how much of the Jedi Council treats her,
Yeah.
you know, being betrayed by Barriss Offee, you know, who we actually don't know what happens to her either. We know that she's actually still like, you know, out there somewhere.
Mhm.
But I think that moment right there is, you know, obviously so devastating, right? And you know, I gotta give a shout out even to Kevin Kiner for the music in that scene, and that, you know, the theme of Ahsoka leaves.
Mhm.
And that right there, that theme has stuck with me all throughout my life, and like whenever I hear it, I just instantly tear up.
So, Brian, are you thinking the same like moment, or
I think that was the pivot point in her life. I think that was because I mean everything going through Clone Wars was so gradual leading up to that moment, and then boom, it's just, you know, paradigm shift, and it's, you know, she's culture shock basically going out into the world, you know, and so, you know, and being betrayed by everybody that she literally trusted her life to. You know, she trusted her life to the Order, and they turned her back on her, you know, at the last minute, and then expected her to just come back like nothing happened. And, you know, I'd be jaded too. But I think one of the saddest moments that I can think of, because that's a great, I mean, that's a pivotal moment. It's right at the end of Clone Wars, at the end of the Siege of Mandalore, when she's at the graves of all the clones and the Venators crashed, and she looks down at her lightsaber one last time and drops it and walks away. I think that's one of the, I mean, if I had to choose one that wasn't her walking away from the Order, it would be that.
It was so in season 1 of Clone Wars with this Malevolence arc, they, Plo Koon's like ship was pretty much destroyed. It was destroyed by Grievous, and there was that moment where the council was basically saying, we just got to leave him and move on. And it was kind of done without really much discussion, outside of Ahsoka basically saying, like, what are you doing? Master Plo could still be alive. And I wonder if later on two things occurred whenever the council was so quick to dismiss her and not back her up, if she was thinking back to, I should have learned that lesson even when I was a bit younger. And then secondly, how much did it hurt when Plo Koon wasn't, with Anakin at Anakin's side defending her after she was the one who didn't give up on him? Different circumstances, of course, but still that same loyalty, remains. And I just wonder if those two lessons came up. Two other moments that I'll bring up that could be the saddest moments. One, this is not Clone Wars, it's Tales of the Jedi, but it's like really close, is that the one where she fights the Inquisitor. So she's still in the like Clone Wars garb. It's very close. Is you see her like someone like falls and she's like gonna reach out with the Force, and she kind of moves the thing real quick, and then she pulls her hand back and looks at it, and it kind of does one of those. And it's not quite up there on the emotional level, but when you think about what the Force means to the Jedi and just how a part of their identity being connected to it is, and how even just tapping into it for a brief moment and that reaction of like, oh, I just did something, wrong, like how emotionally scarring that has to be to a Jedi to experience that. And then the second one, and I cannot believe this is not got brought up, but in season 1, when R2's replacement, R3 or Goldie, turns out to be a separatist spy. Like, come on, that has to be the most devastating Ahsoka betrayal in all of the Clone Wars.
She defended him.
I don't think she was ever really able to trust a droid ever again. I mean, we don't really see her with a droid.
I forgot all about Goldie.
Oh, Goldie.
Ugh. That freaking droid. I didn't think about Goldie at all, but yeah, that betrayal. When that to me, that would I can't even trust the freaking droids. Like, can't trust the droids, can't trust the Jedi. Who can you trust?
That's a good point. So I had a couple other characters. So Jay mentioned Lux Bonteri. So I thought it'd be good. Maybe we talk about his arc for a minute. If anyone's listening, remember, so Lux was the son of a separatist senator that they were going to go meet to do some negotiations. And it was kind of the first time that Ahsoka was met with someone like her own age from the Separatist Alliance who thought similarly in some ways to her, but also just had completely different, points of view and conclusions reached. And it was just really interesting to see that dynamic from we are two opposing forces coming out to this unique bond and friendship actually being formed. And Jay hit it on it earlier, like Ahsoka actually having to deal with the fact that she can't have like those attachments as a Jedi and struggling with like a crush as a teenager. So I want to know, like, what do you guys think more? And Jay, I'd love to hear from you, like more on that because you touched on it earlier. But Brian, I don't think you had touched on it yet as well.
Go ahead, Jay. I'll let you go first.
I was just gonna say, what a piece of work Lux was. I don't know, like you have, like. I realize she's a Jedi and everything, and yet like you said, Tyler, right? Jedi can't have attachments, but I mean, you have Ahsoka right there, who's one of the best, female Padawans there is at that time, and then she likes you, and then the guy's totally oblivious to how he feels. But other than that, I mean, like, I get it, it's part of her own story arc, and like it's part of her own development. But man, the guy totally blew it.
Maybe he's not into like Laku's like coming down. Maybe maybe he's just not into the whole Laku thing.
Yeah, interspecies erotica. Yeah, maybe he's not. I don't know. Maybe. Kanan apparently was, but anyway.
He had no problem.
You're right. The whole thing with Lux, and it didn't get to the same level, but the story arcs between Ahsoka and Anakin are very similar, and they're very close. And it was one of those things that, Anakin was given Ahsoka as a Padawan to learn how to let go and to not form attachments, and that was a lesson he was going to have to learn. But at the same time, this is a lesson that Ahsoka is learning, on her own with Lux, and like I said, it's not on the same level as what Anakin and Padme was, but it's interesting to see this happen and to see how much her path mirrored Anakin's and how much they were actually meant for each other, as master and apprentice and everything like that. So that when Anakin tells her, I understand wanting to walk away from the Order, you have no idea how much I understand. She understood, she knew that. And so I think, Lux is a big pivotal point for her as well.
And we're just mentioning how that's a good segue into talking about Anakin. I mean, you can't talk about the two without we know without knowing that Hayden Christensen's going to be in the Ahsoka show. There's going to be an Anakin appearance of some kind. We could talk about what we hope that is, but in terms of their relationship and the way that, I think everyone views it as, that brother-sister, relationship. What do you think is the most pivotal both lesson that Anakin taught her, but, maybe the most just impactful moment the two shared that's turned her into, kind of the leader that she is? That's a loaded question in terms of
so much.
Anakin.
There's like that could be any episode.
So I'll start. Let me give you guys some time to even think. I remember when the Martez sisters in season 7, she goes to help Trace, and then she helps Rafa, and she's talking about where she learned it. She's like, the Skywalker Academy, and she talks about, well, how'd you learn to fix things or fight like that? My brother taught me. But then shortly after that, she talks about how they were basically saying, why are you trying to help us? Like, what? We don't, owe you anything. You don't know us. And she basically just says, well, what I learned where I come from is when there's someone like in need, you help them no matter what, if you can. And I think regardless of Anakin's issues, I think that was like the one lesson that you learned from Anakin was how deeply he cared for the people around him. And that obviously got in his way many times. But that was, I think, the strongest lesson that Ahsoka took away. I think she just does it in a much healthier way than Anakin does. Like, she didn't know these strangers, but she ultimately nearly dies and gets captured by a crime syndicate just trying to help these two strangers out.
There's another moment with and I can't think of you guys are gonna probably yell at me because I can't think of the name of the episode. But it's the story arc with the Lurman when Anakin is injured and he's out for the count, and she is just distraught over making sure he's okay, and she really has to get pulled away and kind of step into her own without Anakin, and I think that's a good one.
The Jedi Crash and Defenders of the Peace. I only remember that because I've been binging season 1 over the last week, writing that article.
Right.
But that's a really good one. Just him being out and not being able to rely on him. There was a funny line. I put the little clip of it in the article where like Ayla Secura is kind of looking at her and she just goes, well, I guess I've mastered crash landings and almost getting my master killed now. And all right.
Gold star.
You guys have both chose like really excellent ones from the Clone Wars. Unfortunately, it's not really hitting me right now, like anything from Clone Wars. So I'm going to cheat a little bit and talk Tales of the Jedi, because that episode with Ahsoka and Anakin, to me, where Anakin is training Ahsoka to defend herself against the clones when she's ambushed and when she's completely outnumbered, that to me, like people argue like that probably saved Ahsoka's life, right? Mm-hmm. But just even like I remember watching that, and like all the other Jedi and even Ahsoka saying like, why are you so hard on me, right? Why are you being such a jerk and not giving me much praise? But I think like Anakin really embodied that ideal of being tough, not in like a mean or harsh, not in like in a mean-spirited way, but as a way of trying to get someone to be the best version of themselves. And to me, like that has always, like ever since I watched that episode, that stuck with me. The idea of like going through tough challenges, not being afraid to take them on, but really just embracing the toughness and realizing, like, of course it's going to be tough. Yeah. We are going to face tough challenges, but we have to rise up to the occasion and be the best, be the best version of ourselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. He literally he trained her how to survive Order 66, literally taught her how to survive it. I mean, because if you look at some of the moves she's pulling off, it's the exact same, like, the horizontal spin,
right?
720 spin she does up onto the hollow table. Everything's the same. And like, if it wasn't for him, being that hard on her, she wouldn't have survived the Order 60. I mean, it was just, that was a really nice parallel. I like that. Was a good one.
Yes. Yeah.
If we want, let's put Andrew's question back in there where it says, what is your favorite Ahsoka episodes from each season? Maybe top 5. I just wrote down like a tentative list of just 5 episodes that came like off the top of my head. But again, like, I would have to like sit and really think about it for a minute. So I came up with these 5 right here. So the first one I thought of was season 7. It's Old Friends, Not Forgotten. It's whenever she basically kind of is back with the Mandos and she goes with the clones, and they can't accompany her on the mission. Obi-Wan and Anakin can't, but she's back with the clones. That moment to me is just, she's coming back in the fold and everything. So I also wrote that one down. I wrote Lightsaber Lost from season 2.
I was gonna bring that up while ago. Sanube. Yeah.
With Tara Sanube, and she learns a lot of lessons there. I don't think, I wrote him down of my other characters that played a big impact on her, but we saw very little. Where she slows down and actually kind of does it. I wrote Cloak of Darkness, which is season 1 when her and Luminara are trying to transport Newt Gunray back to the Senate for like a trial. That episode, what it does is it gives Ahsoka a lot of wisdom, because Luminara is able to like talk to her like, that's not the Jedi way. That's not how we interrogate people. You need to learn how to press without, using anger or frustration. You need to pull back and probe without. But it is also an episode where Ahsoka is, steps up, and Luminara, arrogantly takes on Ventress by herself. And Ahsoka does kind of leave to go try and rescue her. And she saves Luminara's life and, kind of learns how to trust herself. So I did that. And then I wrote a necessary bond, which is the one where they are with, I believe that's the one where the younglings are escaping from Grievous, and she's protecting the younglings, and she's like this big leader there. And then the last one, I don't remember the name of the episode, but it's the one where she's stuck and having to, with the other, former like younglings, and they're having to defend from like the Trandoshan bounty hunter, or the Trandoshan hunters that are trying to get them at like for sport. Mm-hmm. She's kind of having to do that without anyone's help, no hope that someone's going to come, and she has to kind of to do that herself. I wrote, those are like the 5 that just off the top of my head, like bang, bang, bang. Like those were big iconic moments in the Clone Wars, but also you see that version of Ahsoka. Like we're expecting to see aspects of that Ahsoka in the Ahsoka show, like protecting people close to her. Like she obviously probably feels some responsibility for Ezra, things like that. But you guys go ahead. We can get into it a little bit more.
Tyler, I'll be honest with you, man. Like, you are so much more studied up on the material than I am right now.
I'm a Clone Wars Ahsoka nerd. I'll be honest. Like, it's my favorite character. Just in terms of Ahsoka things I own, I think I have like 15 different figures, poster, book, whatever. Like, it's just my favorite character next to Han Solo. And so, like, this show is just like, I am so excited.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, man, and even Andrew is like testing our knowledge too. Like, oh, what's your favorite episode from each season? I'm like, oh no, like I gotta remember every single episode. No, we appreciate it though, Andrew. But yeah, great question. I'll be honest with you. I've decided for myself not to actually go back and watch the Clone Wars because of, like I said, like I was really young, when I first saw all those episodes, and like, that show means a lot to me. It helped form me who I am, and again, all those lessons that Ahsoka was learning, I was learning. She was very much so my childhood friend. So like I have deliberately chosen not to go back and watch it because, like, frankly, to go back and watch it now, it just wouldn't be the same, and I have like different set of eyes than I did when I was younger, much more experienced eyes. I don't have the same eyes of innocence that I used to have. But I will go ahead and mention, Tyler, you selected a few of the episodes that have stood out for me, all these years. Tara Sanube, that's season 2, episode 1. And that right there was, to me, like the first episode where, I really understood like the lessons that Ahsoka was learning. Learn to be patient, learn to respect your elders, accept correction. And again, as someone who's like going through, I was like 5th grade, 6th grade when that episode aired. I was learning that very much so in school, right? So that one was very much so impactful for me. And then also, I believe you already mentioned it, Tyler, but the episode where Ahsoka is helping out those younglings and they're building their lightsabers, and then she has to look after them. And I really like that episode, not really because of well, I mean, Ahsoka does grow and learn, and yeah, like you said, become this protector and leader, but also that episode has a great supporting cast with Hua Yang, like the droid that's voiced by David Tennant from Doctor Who. He's really great,
Yeah.
and I'm looking forward to him returning as well. And then I can't remember his name right now, but the young Wookiee Padawan.
Oh, was it Gunji?
Gunji, yes, yes. I was thinking like it's not Buryaga.
Yeah.
Buryaga's great, or I guess the Wookiees live so long, it could just be like his son.
Yeah.
Or his grandson.
I think those two episodes, those two set of episodes, are extremely powerful, and again, were impactful even to me, just from the own personal lessons that I took from it as well.
And you get Hondo in that episode too, like when.
Yeah.
So, I mean, come on.
Yeah,
like Hondo
to win. Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Brian? Just a few top Ahsoka episodes.
So one of them is just the low-hanging fruit, and I might as well just go ahead and take it. It's the Mortis episode where she has the vision of her older self.
Yeah.
And her older self is telling her, he's going to kill you. He's going to lead you down the wrong path. And I thought that was a big moment for her too. Not something that I think they showed that she really kind of took that with her, but I think she kept it in the back of her mind the whole time afterwards. You know what I mean? I mean, that was what, season 3. So it was only a couple of seasons later when she left. But yeah, no, the when she was with the younglings and was being hunted down by the Trandoshans, I absolutely adore that episode. I love that episode so much. And yeah, that's one of my top. That's the one to me where it really showed for the first time that she was becoming this leader, that she could help protect these kids and still survive, because I mean, it was a huge threat. That was a big threat. And, she was able to be the words of wisdom for these younglings and teach them lessons that they carried on with themselves. And so I thought that was a great episode.
Brian, I thought the low-hanging fruit you're going to go for was Siege of Mandalore.
You know what? That one's even lower. That one's the big fruit hanging at the bottom, and I was just like, no, Mortis.
I mean, best. We could just say best duel, like best lightsaber fight or whatever.
And that duel was actually mocapped. That duel was actually
it's
mocapped, and
it's
a lot of people don't realize that. That was actually Ray Parks as Maul fighting, and I don't remember who it was they got for Ahsoka, but
Lauren Mary Kim.
Yep. And that was I mean, that was when you watch it after knowing it's mocap, you can tell it's mocap. I mean, you can see it then, but a lot of people didn't realize that that's what that was. That was a good fight.
Yeah, and then I mean, it's cool to even think about like how they had to think of like Ahsoka's own fight style too. How because obviously like when you hand animating, you don't have to think, like what are the practicalities of this move, and they can have them do all kinds of crazy flips and tricks. But to have like you said, Ray Park and Lauren Mary Kim, who also does some of the stunt work for the armorer in The Mandalorian, to have her develop that fight style, awesome, just completely awesome.
It's a great duel. Great duel.
So we're on Siege of Mandalore, and obviously Bo-Katan is the relationship that her and Ahsoka formed went beyond just the few episodes that we saw, because in The Mandalorian season 2, she knew exactly where Ahsoka was. She was like, "Oh, go to, yada yada, and she'll be there, and you'll hang out and have a good time, and she'll help you out." And I want to know for you guys, one, what do you think that relationship really meant to Ahsoka at that time? Because of all the people that she could have turned to post Order 66. Now, we don't know how long the gap was in between their next contact, but clearly for them to know exactly where each other were during that time.
Any given moment, right?
Yeah, there has to be some level of consistent contact. So I don't know what it is. Is there a moment in those 4 episodes that sticks out to you that like maybe that was where their bond really, formalized and what led it on. I'm just curious what your guys' thoughts are on that relationship as a whole, because she doesn't have very many like friends or confidants. And so I thought that was like really interesting that Bo-Katan was like, yeah, I know exactly where she is.
I think it's the moment that the Jedi decide we're not going to go help her, but we'll send the 501st with you. I think that was the moment when Bo-Katan realized that Ahsoka, no matter what, was going to go to war with them on Mandalore, and the Jedi weren't going to help them at all. They were more worried about the Chancellor, because she even made, she tried to fight Anakin on it and Obi-Wan, and to the point where Obi-Wan was like, that's not fair. I mean, some of the things that she was saying to him. And so I think the moment Bo-Katan saw Ahsoka choose her, and choose her cause, even though the Jedi wouldn't, I think that was the moment, especially considering how close Obi-Wan and her sister were. And Obi-Wan and Satine were very close. And so the fact that Obi-Wan would even help him and Ahsoka would, I think that was because Mandalorians are big on honor and big on loyalty. And that was, I think that was the solidifying moment, honestly.
And then in reverse, for Ahsoka, what was that moment? So like Bo-Katan at that moment's like, all right, I'm in. What do you think the moment was for Ahsoka in reverse to be like, this is someone I want to reach out to or feel like I can even reach out to?
It's a good question.
What do you think, Jay?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And now that I'm thinking about it, I think that even in Rebels, Bo-Katan is in Star Wars Rebels, but it's not like there's a scene between Bo-Katan and Ahsoka. It's just her, and it's Bo-Katan, Sabine, and the Rebels crew on Mandalore. That's a great question. I don't know if I can really answer you, Tyler, but if I were to give a guess, it'd probably have to be something somewhere along the lines of the battle between when Maul takes over Mandalore, and then you have I'm blanking out right now. Who's Obi-Wan's love interest?
Satine.
Oh, Satine.
Satine. Yeah, it's gotta be like
you forget her.
I know. I'm gonna catch
the fact we haven't got
shade.
a Satine name drop from Bo-Katan yet. When she said like my sister used to rule all of it, just say the name.
Yeah, no, like I remember watching that episode in The Mandalorian, with Bo-Katan when she first appears. She's talking about a Jedi. Yeah, she's like, I know a Jedi. And I like legit I literally was like in my couch going like, like going like listening like close, bringing my ear close to the the stereo. So like, okay, say the name. But
you think that's wild? I have to tell this story.
Go ahead.
It is. I stayed up until 3 a.m. to watch this. Actually, no, that's not true. I fell asleep on my couch, as is normal. Woke up at like 1:45 and was like, Mando comes on in an hour and 15. I'm kind of, expecting the possible Ahsoka name drop could happen this episode, something like that. I'll wait for the, watch it, right at 3 a.m. So I'm fixing a snack. We're vibing. We're ready to go. 3 a.m. hits and Mando, lands on the planet. I'm like expecting possibly like Bo-Katan to show up or something. And the frog people, Frog Lady is reunited with Frogman. And I thought I was hallucinating. My laptop is sitting in front of me on my, living room table, and a frog falls from the ceiling onto my laptop in the middle of my living room. I'm like, just freaking out. I'm like, what did I eat? Like, where am I? Like, I was like, why is there a frog here? And so I'm like, where did that come from? So I open the door, throw the frog outside, and I go sit down and I continue watching. The next scene, when Grogu is dropped off with like the frog people, as he's like gonna do whatever, he asks them to like watch him for a little bit, or next time he sees the frog people, maybe not in the same message, but later on, I hear this noise coming from like my kitchen, and I turn around, and I'm walking, and sitting on the counter is another frog, and I chased that frog around, and I'm just wondering, like, I made so much noise, like trying to get this frog. My roommate come down 3 a.m. like, are you doing? I was like, I'm chasing frogs around our living room while there's frog people on the TV speaking to one another. Like I'm having an out of body experience right now. Anyway, that is nothing to do with Clone Wars, but just talking about that just reminded me of like this random moment I had with myself where I'm recording these frogs that had like the doors were all closed to me. I don't know how they got in. The doors are all closed. Is Florida for you, I guess. But
Grogu was in the
anyway.
corner trying to hover one to him.
He's like
Grogu was having a snack attack in the corner, and he was just like,
he's actually opening my door and tossing them in and then closing them. I'm not looking. But anyway, Jay, please enlighten us with a wonderful take, please. Back on track.
Okay. I don't know. What do you got, Tyler or Brian?
I think that moment for Bo-Katan happened in Rebels. I think that one was later on. I think, or for Ahsoka, I mean, I think that moment was later on in Rebels, when they got back, into the fight together, and you had the whole, Sabine arc, and where she had built the weapon that they were using to basically disintegrate all the organic material and these Mandalorians and whatnot. I think during that whole fight, that was when Ahsoka figured out that she could trust Bo-Katan. I think that was it.
Yeah, I mean, now that I remember,
Ahsoka is not around during that.
Was she? That was season 3.
No, she's not around at that point. It's just Kanan.
Oh, you might be right. Oh God.
It's all right. It's okay.
I'm embarrassed. Oh, you're right. I think you're right. Okay, so I take back everything I just said. I just wasted 45 seconds of everybody's life.
I was going to mention this earlier, but, now that I think about it, Tyler and Brian, you guys are right, because at the start when Bocatan and Ahsoka first meet, they are enemies, right? Or, they have a bit of mistrust.
They're Jedi and Mandalorian, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Right. Sworn rivals in a way. So it is really interesting to think about how that relationship developed. And yeah, now that I think about it though, like with Ahsoka being like Fulcrum and having that being a spy in the rebellion, I think that there had to be some contact going between the two, between Bo-Katan and Ahsoka, while Ahsoka was helping the rebellion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and maybe that moment for Ahsoka, hasn't been seen.
Yeah, I think there probably were some scenes and some contact again that we haven't seen before, or that wasn't explored in the Rebels or in the shows. Mm-hmm. But I think that definitely that relationship again, Tyler, that you honed in on is a really vital one.
I just think back on when Order 66 happens and Ahsoka pretty much has to go into hiding and she's with Rex and they're figuring out what to do. Obviously, she ends up talking with Bail Organa, because she becomes Fulcrum, helps with that, and her and Rex become out of contact for some time. We don't know what's going on post Return of the Jedi because, of course, once the Empire is fallen, we don't know what's going on. I have this feeling that when Order 66 happens and she has no one to turn to, I think that while her and Bo-Katan weren't necessarily best friends, she knows that, one, Bo-Katan doesn't view her as some sort of like traitor that, needs to be executed, like most of the galaxy had to view the Jedi. And two, Bo-Katan is someone that would have no love for the Empire. She didn't want Republic troops really to be that involved before. She was with Death Watch. She wanted to kind of get rid of these groups that were governing Mandalorians. So I think that maybe it was just a natural ally to make for her that probably blossomed into a more, partner relationship. I would love for Bo-Katan to be in the Ahsoka show. I don't think there's going to be enough time for that to develop. I think that's going to be something we see in the Filoni movie that takes place at some point.
That gets mentioned, man, I get goosebumps. It's like, it's happening.
So I think we're getting to 45 minutes. I think the last thing we should discuss, and you guys can, feel free to go another direction. But Balin, the character played by Ray Stevenson, talked about how Anakin always spoke very highly of her in the trailer. That was like the line that he said. So I'm wondering, are we going to get anything in the show? And this is more prediction based, but just Clone Wars wise, do you think that Ahsoka was aware of who this Jedi was during the Clone Wars? Was this something that there might be some shared history there? Slash, do you think that Balin's experiences from the Clone Wars are going to be kind of at the forefront of his character arc in this show, being a Jedi that did not die during Order 66 and has basically been, I believe, like a mercenary for hire? So what are those impacts from his Clone Wars time going to have on him? And will we get more into a possible backstory between him, Anakin, Ahsoka, and whatnot?
At this point, with these shows, with what we've gotten so far, I've learned to never say never. Mm-hmm. We've gotten some pretty cool stuff in some of these episodes before, things that we never thought we would get to see. You know, I mean, think about it. We saw live action Luke Skywalker taking down Dark Troopers. Like, that is the coolest freaking thing I could have ever thought would happen in one of these shows, right?
It's also hard to like think what could possibly top that, you know?
And with Dave Filoni doing this show, right? I think he knows what fans want. Think about Book of Boba Fett with the entire episode with Luke and Grogu. You know, I mean, that was such a magical episode, right? Like, it was just some of the best Star Wars storytelling, bar none. And everybody was there. It was so good. So I don't put anything past Filoni at this point, or Jon Favreau. I know we're going to end up, before Ahsoka comes out in like 3 weeks, less than 3 weeks now, we're going to do a predictions thing on the live, but I'm going to go ahead and make a prediction right now because you're talking about Balin and the history there. I'm going to go ahead and make a prediction now that we're going to see a flashback at some point to a younger version of Balin at the Jedi Temple talking to Anakin during the Clone Wars. Ahsoka's going to be there, probably going to be a different actress playing Ahsoka, a younger version of her. And I'm going to go as far as say Ashley Eckstein's going to be dubbed in for the voice for her. Just for the flashback, not for the show, but just for the flashback to the younger Ahsoka. And I think you're going to see Anakin say something to him about, you know, how much like, you know, him she is and how much of himself he sees in her and all this stuff. And I think we're going to see that before we get to the point where Balin tells Ahsoka in the series, you know, Anakin spoke very highly of you. You know, mm-hmm. I think we're going to see that. I think it's going to be one of those surprise moments, kind of like the flashback scene in Obi-Wan, where it was Obi-Wan and Anakin fighting, having the practice sparring duel.
Oh, so good.
So good. And I think it's going to be along those lines. I think it's going to be that kind of a flashback where you're not even going to see it coming. It's going to be a cold open on one of the episodes. And then, you know, it's going to jump back to the present, you know, and kind of go from there. So that's my prediction. I'm going to run with it. And I'm going to say, nobody's going to talk me out of this because I'm told that it's going to happen.
Jay, what about you?
That's a bold prediction. First off,
I'm doing it. I'm calling it down to the detail, dude. I'm going to call it down to the detail.
Are you also willing to put money down?
Depends on the odds. Depends on what odds you give him.
Oh my God, do I have that much faith in Filoni?
Like, what odds? I mean, I wouldn't do a straight up bet, but if like you gave me like decent odds, like
I'd put $50 on it.
Whoo! Oh boy! All right,
I put $50.
Well,
people in the chat, tell me, am I crazy? Like, is that something that Filoni would be crazy enough to do?
Okay.
Here's the thing with Filoni is that I expect him to. Every story he's told, like from season 1 of Rebels, you get, you know, a Melu Run episode that actually holds great weight in the line that we see in season 4. Something that happens in season 1 of Clone Wars will directly impact the character subtly in their perspective, you know, in the final moments of their life or the final moments of the show. Like nothing is going to be by mistake. Everything is intentional. The only concern I have is if he does so much where it just feels like he's playing like popcorn with all of the characters and little things where it's no longer like a subtle, tasteful nod. It's more of that kind of just full on nostalgia. Like feel like you did during the Clone
Right.
Wars. That's the only thing that concerns me, because this is, and part of what you said is I'm really excited for Filoni, but this is his first, the gloves are off. This is your live action project. This is your character. I imagine he had full creative control over the scripts, over everything, because it's his, Ahsoka's his baby.
Mm-hmm.
So I am both super excited for what the possibilities could be with like a Balin's Clone Wars history or Ahsoka's Clone Wars history. But I'm also slightly nervous, like how crazy, like too much on the nose are we gonna be? But
Right.
I lean way more excited, of course. I mean, this thing's gonna be just bonkers.
We're gonna see a flashback to Clone Wars at some point. I mean, we're gonna have
as long as it's not a flashback of a scene that I don't want to go to a flashback, a scene that we've already seen or expressed. That's why like the Obi-Wan Anakin sparring thing was awesome, because it had real life implications on the moment they were both in.
Right. Yeah.
Right there. I see some people sometimes online saying like they would love like to see this in live action. I'm like, no, like we've already seen it. Like I would love to see some sort of new lesson that Anakin teaches Ahsoka, or like the Balin thing where you're going back and seeing that if they did that.
Well, I mean, think about this too, though. In the trailer, we've already seen the live action version of the end of Rebels. I mean, it's basically shot for shot, just live action. So some of it's going to translate over, but I think I'm just going to stand by it. I'm going to stand by it. Andrew says it's definitely possible, but not likely. I'm standing by it. I'm gonna die on this hill.
We're gonna have to write that one down.
I'm gonna die on this hill. And when it happens, the next time we get on this show,
look,
all y'all.
Predictions episode. Right. You can lead with it.
Brian, I hope you're right, and I really hope like you get what you're predicting. I'm not going to
be disappointed if it doesn't happen, but I'm.
You know what? Talking about Balin though, really quick, I think that a flashback sequence is definitely possible, and I think that'd be a great way to introduce the character. Talk about have him I don't know if we want to do another Order 66 scene, but show him surviving.
You have 66 of them before it's over with.
Yeah, right. We're like legit. Like there's so many scenes of Order 66 and of the Jedi dying and like escaping, but we'll see. I definitely think again a flashback sequence of Balin, maybe even Shin Hati, his future apprentice. I think that's definitely possible. I don't know if I'm gonna go full on with Brian though. With you, I'm not sure. I'm hesitant about young Ahsoka. I'm hesitant about like Ahsoka being like a young Ahsoka and like Hayden and Anakin. Again, I mean it's. We'll wait and see. And I hope you get what you want.
I swear to God, when you guys watch this and it happens, I want you guys to get in our Discord chat and just let me know when you've seen it, because I know it's gonna happen. I have this feeling. I don't know. It just seems too perfect for me. I don't know. It just seems like something that would happen. Anyway,
I do hope when the show starts. It was online today that the first 2 episodes, are dropping together, and they're going to be an hour and 36 minutes, like the combined runtime. So that's a good 2 episodes, 45 minutes basically with each one. I kind of hope, I don't know if you've thought about this with, remember Obi-Wan Kenobi show, it started off with this like 3-minute montage kind of mini movie trailer of Obi-Wan. I would love for them to do something like that with Ahsoka, and they could even in Rebels to some degree, to introduce, for people that are watching this show are probably going to go on YouTube and figure out. But I think it'd be a cool entry, and they could keep it all with the animated, stuff even, and just, have a brief few minutes with this intro to who this character is, why they matter, because there's going to be some people out there that do watch this and do not know who Ahsoka's master is or who Thrawn is, and they're going to be introduced to these characters for the first time. And I think it's important maybe to have a little bit on there. They did that with the trailer a little bit, but a little more doesn't hurt. But I feel like we've really touched on like everything in Clone Wars, like imaginable. There's some characters we could see pop in that we didn't really talk a ton about, like Hondo being in Rebel in the show would not
I
surprise
swear to
me.
God. I want a
Um,
live action Hondo so bad.
like Hondo being in there wouldn't surprise me. You know, some of these other people that were impactful in her life wouldn't that we mentioned wouldn't surprise me. Ultimately, I think that the Clone Wars is such a defining series
Yeah.
for so many characters, but you know, in a lot of ways, it's remarkable how a character like Ahsoka, when she was first released, the vitriol and the hatred from sections of the fandom towards her, um, how kind of in some, because it's one thing to have, you know, to be like, I don't really appreciate how they're doing this character, but then it's another thing when some of it goes off the deep end and it gets just really hateful. It's remarkable how a character that experienced that much disdain at the beginning is now really at the forefront of Star Wars for a while now, and is going to be, you know, getting her own show, is going to be a big focal point probably in a movie that's upcoming. And I think that it's really cool to see how both the fandom that has also let us down a lot of times, but also, you know, the fandom, you know, in this instance has shown an ability to grow and adapt. And I don't know about you guys, but the show that I love, which is Clone Wars, almost feels like this is like the crowning achievement for Clone Wars fans, in a sense, that have been like, this stuff is really great, and we're going to see a lot of those aspects in live action, I think.
Yeah.
I felt that same way when Ahsoka appeared in The Mandalorian. Like when she appeared on my screen on that Wednesday morning when I saw it, when I saw the episode, I was like, oh wow, you know, my childhood friend made it.
See, I'll be one of those guys, and I think I've said it on the show before. I wasn't a huge fan of her in live action the first time I saw her, and now, you know, I mean, I don't think I'm gonna get a lot of hate for this. I don't think she nailed it as Ahsoka in Mandalorian on her first episode, but I think by the time Book of Boba Fett rolled around and she had her episode with Luke, and you know, talking about how Grogu was a Padawan, perhaps he's a Padawan now. You know, she had the mannerisms down, I think, a lot more, and I saw a lot more Ahsoka. So at this point, I'm on completely on board with her as Ahsoka. But just that first episode of Mando, all I saw was Rosario Dawson.
I agree partially. Like I think, you know, that first episode took a bit of use. Like it took time to get used to it, not just for her but for ourselves.
Right.
But even now, you know, I think when it's just, I think they what they did with her appearance now, they improved her Leku and Montrals. And I think the lightsabers, I think they look a little bit better, and they nailed like more of that combat and style to her. Those few adjustments have gone a long way to develop.
And just a little bit of her physical mannerisms.
Yes.
The way she crosses her arms, and you know, just little things. So
I don't know what it is. I'm not a fan of the lightsabers in the trailer, and like I don't know about like, do they look a little bit too real?
They're a little
to
short.
You guys?
Like there's an actual
You can see the glow stick kind of thing that they're using now versus
like
the movies
films too.
Yeah,
because even if you look at the poster for Rise of Skywalker, the one where, you know, not the far shot with the Emperor, but I mean, the one where you can actually see kind of the shadow of the blade on the side of the lightsaber. And so, I noticed that throughout the sequel films too, because they used those practical.
I love Kylo's look, because you can see kind of with that one, his always looked good to me, but I did see that a little with the others, and
and I think, you know, Luke's lightsaber looked great in Mando. But yeah, with Ahsoka sabers, I can see a little bit of what you're saying. Honestly.
And also with a little bit with like Balin or Shins at the beginning, I kind of feel like it's just
a little weird, but
and it might look different when the show comes out. Like, of course,
we haven't seen a lightsaber before, and we don't know what the deal with those are, you know, is anyway. So,
and that's just a nitpick I'll get over once I'm watching it. It's just, I don't know. It's just one of those things sometimes when you watch and like, should a lightsaber look like that's what the nerds say. Most people watch and they're like, oh, cool lightsabers. And I'm like, oh, yes, but it looks like you can see the glow stick.
Well, what's funny too is there's only one other moment in all of Star Wars films before the original 6 films. There's only one moment where you see lightsabers putting off any color of light, and it's when Anakin's having his weird close-in duel with Dooku in Attack of the Clones.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the only other time you ever see light coming off these blades. Other times you see them right up by their faces, and there's no light on the face, like there's no residual glow anywhere. But man, now they're really going for it in these new ones. You know, Obi-Wan and Vader, obviously they used it for great dramatic effect. I think it worked really well, and they're really going for it in these series too with these lightsabers now, and even with the sequel trilogy, they're really putting that glow off now to make them look, you know, a little more realistic. But
what is it in like Fallen Order when and everything when you just hold your lightsaber up to walk around, light the way?
Yeah.
Or in Rise of Skywalker when Rey does it to light the way, and then Poe flicks out the flashlight and
get
the little look.
Yeah.
Anyway, before we get off here, Brian,
what's up?
Where can we find you at?
You guys can find me right here every week doing the weekly roundup for Star Wars Newsnet. You can find me on the live stream here every week. You can also find me on my own show, which is going to be coming back on August 19th. Really excited about it. It's the Star Wars Canon Podcast. We're getting back to the basics, baby. We're going back to what the show used to be. My co-host is going to be joining me again from across the pond out of Cairo, Egypt, Usuf Wally. We're gearing up for an awesome return and really looking forward to it quite a bit. You guys can also check out our website. It is starwarscanon.net. I'm still working on getting the timelines broken down by era, but it is still under construction, so keep that in mind if you go to it. But you can go there, check out the timeline, and listen to a bunch of our shows. We're also taking the Marvel content that we had on that website, and we're going to be starting a website for it on its own. So we'll be having a Star Wars site and a Marvel site at the same time. Same group of guys talking about all kinds of stuff. They're going to be talking about MCU stuff left and right, but we'll have links to both sites on each site so you guys can flip back and forth if you want. But keep an eye out for that. So marvelcast.net will be going live here in the next few weeks.
That is awesome, Brian.
Yeah, that epic shot with you with your new lightsaber, I love that.
Yeah, I actually
it doesn't fit on the screen real great, but it
almost looks better that way. Like it's, you know, just kind of, it goes off like it's like, you know.
Yeah, I love that.
I'm looking forward to checking it out when it airs.
I'm excited.
But yeah,
Jay, you had a review drop today, I believe. So
yes,
talk about that.
Wow. I had a review for Yoda issue number 10. Great comic. I absolutely loved it.
Ooh, finally.
And yes, it was like, I think the series is great, and I rated it a 10 out of 10. The review caught the attention of writer Kevin Scott, which was absolutely awesome and mind-blowing. I saw his tweet, and I started reading it where he used one of my quotes, and I was like, oh wait, this is mine. You know, I was like, he used my quote. That's so cool. Yes, that was huge. That was huge, and I loved it, and I was really appreciative of that. But yeah, no, I will be continuing writing for Star Wars Newsnet. I also recently had the we're doing the Countdown to Ahsoka article series on Star Wars Newsnet. Please check that out as well. We are, doing a article every day, going to the release of Ahsoka. I have a piece that just came out on the different the evolution of Ahsoka's different outfits and designs. So please go ahead and check that out. Thank you so much again to Andrew. Hey, you've been here with us all night. We appreciate it. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the review as well. So yeah, please again check out Star Wars Newsnet every day for more articles. There's also going to be an article by myself on the 15th anniversary of Star Wars, the Star Wars: The Clone Wars movie, which is huge because again, I was 9 years old when that movie came out. I saw it on my 9th birthday. I'll be 24, which is crazy. 15 years later, 24, and here I am talking about Star Wars, which is huge. Also, really quick, I also want to mention I do also write for Utini, which is a Star Wars book company. We review Star Wars books, and we are also branching out to other stuff. I'm not being paid by them. This is just like a little, hopefully guilt-free plug for Utini. But I also have an article on their website, utini.com, called My Childhood Friend Ahsoka Tano, where I talk about how much Ahsoka personally means to me as someone who grew up with her. So yeah, no, thanks. I really enjoyed being here, and I had a great time as always, guys.
That's awesome, Jay. I always like your reviews, especially your comic ones. They're always really insightful.
Thank you. I really
especially for
appreciate
those
that.
of us, like, I can't keep up with all the comics, so a lot of times I'll try to hit the major issues for some of the series, and then for the others I just try to read some of the reviews that we put out. And that's something that really helps out Star Wars News Net does so well, is every single comic, every single book, there's nothing that does not get some sort of like review, even if it's a game, whatever. Like, we hit everything. If you're a Clone Wars nerd, I did a deep dive into Clone Wars Season 1. I went through every single episode that Ahsoka is in, broke it up into different arcs. I put quotes from people to her that I thought impacted her perspective. I put clips that I put together from the show that I thought were funny, whether it be Ahsoka, just calling someone by a hurtful name, to an actual, in the Wizard, like there was one where she just called some Trandoshan, a slimy Lizardo. So I thought that was funny, and I put that in there. But stuff like that, I'll be doing a few more of those as we count down every single thing. I started watching Season 5 today to do an Ahsoka breakdown for Season 5. And then I already have some notes put together for Rebels Season 4. I'll be doing something for that as well. And then Tales of Light and Life, that review will come out in a few weeks. I'm just almost to the bell load-in like stuff that's in there. So I'm really excited for that.
Dude.
So I will be there doing that. And other than that, I told Brian this earlier. I set up my Mandalorian wall in my classroom for my students today. Have my Mandoverse wall set up so that kids will come in and know exactly what it is. I also have a Darth Maul cardboard cutout right next to the door, so they can't see it when they walk in. And last year on the first day, 1 out of every 4 kids just about has a heart attack when they walk in and see Darth Maul just hovering there. So I'm looking forward to seeing what that happens. And then I have a Padme cutout that hangs from the ceiling as you enter. So you turn into my room and you just see her staring at you, and that gets them too. So
I wish I had a Padme cutout hanging from my ceiling.
Man. Not that version of Padme.
What? No, what are you talking about? No,
no, they some of the kids are always like, who is that? It's like from Phantom Menace when she has like the whole headgear on and everything, and they're like, why is there a woman hanging from your ceiling, Mr. Bradshaw? I'm like, well, someday you may learn. Anyway, Brian, how about you close us out here, and we'll see everyone next Thursday.
As always, guys, we'll catch you on the next one. May the Force be with you.